All right. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into a really powerful and honestly pretty clever feature of the Model Context Protocol. It's called elicitation. And it's all about making those interactions with AI way more dynamic and, crucially, more secure. For those moments when an AI just gets stuck and needs a little nudge from a human. So let's set the scene. Imagine you've built this awesome AI assistant, right? Its job is to create a new code repository for you. It kicks off the process, everything's looking good, and then, bam, it just stops, grinds to a halt. What happened? Well, it's missing a piece of information it just can't make up, the username. So, what do you do now? Well, you could try to cram all this complex, hey, go ask the user for stuff logic right into your prompts. But let's be real, that gets messy and super unreliable fast. The good news is, the Model Context Protocol has a much more elegant answer. It gives us a formal, structured way to handle this exact kind of problem. Okay, so here's how we're going to break it all down today. First, we'll talk about that missing information problem. Then we'll get into elicitation, which is the protocol's answer. After that, we'll look at the two different modes it has, form versus URL. Then a super important part, the security golden rule, and we'll wrap it all up with your key takeaways. All right, Section 1, the missing information problem. Or, as I like to call it, moving beyond those brittle, fragile prompts. See, the real challenge here is getting away from that guesswork. We need a rock-solid way for a server to basically raise its hand and say, hey, I am paused over here. I need a specific piece of info to keep going, without just hoping the model figures it out.
And that brings us to Section 2, elicitation, the protocol's big answer to this problem. You can think of it as a first-class channel for that human-in-the-loop interaction we keep hearing about. The key thing to understand is that this isn't some hack or an afterthought. No, it's an official, standardized mechanism built right into the core of the Model Context Protocol.
So let's get down to brass tacks. What is elicitation really? Well, here's the formal definition. It's a standardized way for a server to just hit pause on what it's doing, turn to the user through the client app, and ask for more information right then and there. Once it gets that info, it just picks up right where it left off. You can almost think of it like an interactive parameter resolver baked right into the protocol itself. Pretty neat, huh? Okay, Section 3, the two modes, form versus URL. And the subtitle here is key, choosing the right tool for the job. Because elicitation isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. It actually gives you two very different ways to ask for information. And let me tell you, picking the right one is absolutely critical, especially when we start talking about security.
And this little chart here, it frames the whole decision perfectly. You've got form mode on one side, which is for your simple, non-sensitive data. Think stuff that passes through the client, what we call in-band. Then you have URL mode, and that's for the serious stuff, the sensitive flows like authentication or payments. Here, the data travels completely outside the client. That's out of band. And that right there, that data path, that is the absolute key difference between the two.
So let's zoom in on form mode for a second. Here's how it works. The server sends out a request, but attached to it is a JSON schema. This schema is basically a little blueprint that defines exactly what data it needs. Maybe a string for a username, a number for an age, that kind of thing. The client app sees this schema and can automatically generate a native UI form for the user. It can even validate the input before sending that nice structured data back to the server. It's really perfect for that non-sensitive stuff where it's okay for the client to be a trusted go-between. Now let's talk about its counterpart, URL mode. This is a newer addition to the protocol, and it's built for all the heavy-duty, super sensitive stuff. So instead of sending a JSON schema, the server just sends a single URL. That's it. And the client's job? It's incredibly simple. Just show that URL to the user and let them decide to open it. And here's the most crucial point, so listen close. The sensitive interaction, the OAuth login, the credit card form, it all happens directly between the user and that secure website. The data never, ever passes through the client. Not a single. And this clear line in the sand between in-band and out-of-band data, well, it leads us straight to Section 4, the security golden rule. This is so important. Your choice of which mode to use isn't just about what's easier for you as a developer. No way. It is a fundamental, critical security decision. And here it is, the rule itself, straight from the protocol docs. I want this burned into your brain. You never, ever use form mode for sensitive information. I'm talking passwords, API keys, credit card numbers, anything like that. All of it, 100% of it, has to be handled using URL mode.
The whole point is to keep that precious data far, far away from the client and the model context. But wait, it's not just on the server. Even when you're using the secure URL mode, the client application itself has some really important security jobs to do. First, it absolutely must not just automatically open the URL. It has to get the user's permission first. And before they say yes, it must show them the full URL so there are no surprises. This is all about making sure that handoff is secure, right? Which means using a proper, secure browser view, not some janky, inspectable web view where things could go wrong. Okay, so this probably has you thinking, what if a bad actor gets their hands on that URL? I mean, since the server just sends a URL, what's to stop an attacker from starting a process, grabbing that URL for themselves, and then tricking someone else into clicking it? You're right to be worried because that is a classic textbook phishing attack. Yeah, let's walk through exactly how this scary scenario plays out. So you've got your attacker, let's call her Alice. She starts an authorization request and gets back a unique URL. But instead of clicking it herself, she copies it and sends it over to her victim, Bob. Now Bob, being an unsuspecting user, clicks the link. He sees what looks like a totally legitimate login page for a service he actually uses, so he logs in and authorizes it. Here's the terrifying part. The server has no idea it's Bob. It thinks this authorization belongs to Alice's original request, so it happily binds Bob's credentials to Alice's account. And just like that, it's a full account takeover. So how do you stop that nightmare scenario? Well, the protocol is crystal clear about this. The fix is the server's responsibility. The server absolutely must have a way to check that the person starting the flow is the exact same person finishing it. This could be something like checking for a valid session cookie when the URL is visited. The key is to verify that the user who clicks Go in the client app is the same one who logs in on the web page. No exceptions. Phew, okay, we've covered a ton of ground. So let's wrap up with our final section, your key takeaways. We're going to boil all of this down to the absolute essential best practices you need to walk away with when you're working with elicitation. All right, takeaway number 1. Okay, first big takeaway. Form mode is your go-to for simple, structured, non-sensitive data. Think usernames, dates, user preferences. In this world, the client is an active and trusted part of the conversation, acting as that helpful intermediary.
Key takeaway number 2.
Second thing to remember, URL mode is for the opposite situation. It's built specifically for sensitive data and secure flows. Its entire purpose is to create a protective bubble, a secure boundary around the client. The client's only job is to hand the user off safely, keeping those precious credentials out of the loop.
And finally, the third and maybe most important takeaway, and this is the big one. Choosing between form and URL mode is not, I repeat, not a developer preference. It's not about which one is easier to code. It is a critical security decision, period. The choice is driven entirely by how sensitive the data is, and if you get this wrong, the consequences can be incredibly serious.
So I'll leave you with a final thought to chew on. As these collaborations between humans and AI get more and more complex, how are formal protocols like this one going to shape the future of trust and safety? Because really, things like elicitation, they're more than just specs. They're becoming the bedrock, the foundation of trust that allows us to build these incredible, complex systems, and to do it responsibly.